And let me just find Rich and get him on also.
Do you want my video on or off? Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me either. Okay, let me get this up here. And are we ready?
Wait one sec. I'm looking for the annotation, but I don't see it.
You want me to stop sharing and take a look for it?
Keep sharing. Let's see if this, here we go. And okay, I think I'm good.
Okay, open B. Score contest. Okay, Stonebridge Photography Club, open class B, idyllic.
That's a really nice scene. I like the anchor down at the bottom of the rocks. I think that it could probably stand to be cropped about here.
I can't see your cropping. Yeah, I can't see your annotation.
Okay, you don't see the arrow moving across?
No, I don't.
Let's try something else then. Can you see the mouse now? No?
I can't. Can you, Rich?
No.
Let me try one more thing. Let me try drawing. How about now?
Yeah, I see now.
Okay, I'll stick with that then. I'd crop it about there. The sky, you know, the clouds are pleasant, but I think that the picture would be stronger cropped just above the mountains. Your interest is primarily in the mountains and the reflection with the anchoring rocks. I might have tried to clone or content-aware fill these grasses out since they're just partly in the picture. But for the B class, I'll take a second look, 7.
Family sculpture.
I'm struggling a little bit to, you know, it's an interesting sculpture, but it's really a record shot, a picture of someone else's artwork. And I just don't know that the photographer added anything to it by the photo. It's not badly exposed, although the side facing us is primarily in shadow. I'm going to give it a 6.
Seeking freedom.
Well, it's a nice narrative. I like the tiger itself. The tiger is sharp. I'll take a second look, 7.
Graham's Day Out.
It's a wonderful story. You know, normally you don't want to shoot somebody from the back, but I think here it works well. It's a good narrative. It engages my eye and it engages my brain. 7.
Flying high.
Shot out of a plane window, I assume. I might have cropped a little bit. You know, the sky really holds no interest. I might have cropped it about here. Well, of course, that line is supposed to be straight, but it's not. But you get the idea. I might have cropped it about there. I think your story is really primarily in the bottom part of the picture. 6.
Tower of Bodies.
My feeling about this is similar to my feeling about the other picture of the artwork. You know, it's an interesting artwork. It's a little bit underexposed. It looks like it could be about half a stop more exposed, in addition to which the time of day isn't that favorable. It looks like it was taken close to midday, judging by the shadows directly under all the figures. 6.
Camera shy.
Again, a nice story. I'm going to give the maker credit for some creativity here. Would it look better at a smaller f-stop so that both the bench and the dog were in focus? Perhaps, it's hard to say. Yeah, to quibble a little bit, the tip of the dog's nose is a little soft. I really think that that a smaller f-stop might have helped, although the eyes are in focus, and that is clearly the most important part. A great story, though, and it's creative, and on that basis, I'll give it a 7.
Hot pink.
I like the angle. I like the photographer looking straight down. Well, not quite straight down, but down at an angle into the center of the flower. I do think, though, that in these kind of shots, again, a smaller f-stop, and it might be a little advanced for B class, but if I were doing it, I would have tried some focus stacking, where you focus on the tip of the, I forget whether it's a stamen or a pistil, and you focus here, focus here, focus here, and take maybe a dozen shots all the way down into the center. And that way, you'd have it mostly in focus by merging those together in Photoshop from front to back, and it would certainly be more pleasing. But as I look, it's hard to see really, and perhaps right here, it might be sharp, but nothing else, including these, is sharp, so I'm going to have to give it a 6.
Waimea Canyon, sorry pronunciation.
Very famous canyon in Hawaii. I just think it could be cropped in more. I don't know that you really have much interest. Well, I'm not drawing it well, but in this section, it's very dark. You get very little detail in it. I think that the most interesting part of the image is probably about like this, or maybe over a little more on over here. So it would be much more powerful, much stronger if it were cropped in, I think. As presented, I'm going to have to give it a 6.
Coming out of the forest.
Again, a photo of someone else's artwork, but here I think it's a little stronger because it's presented in context. And I think the context itself is interesting. Half surrounded by trees on the left side. I think 2 things would make this a stronger image. I do think it could be cleaned up. These structures over here and over here and over here, I think detract from the image. A little bit of work with either content-aware fill or with the healing brush, spot healing brush, would really do wonders. However, there's a more major concern, and that is the statue itself is soft. I'm looking at the image, and I really don't see anything that is sharp. I'm going to have to give it a 6.
2 ducks beating tails up.
You have to chuckle at it. You know, it's not perfect. You have a little blown out whites right here. So the exposure isn't perfect. but it's such a great story. Would I have cropped it in a little bit? Probably. You know, in my shots and in judging, I try and look for elimination of anything that's extraneous. And I think your image from here in is probably the strongest. But, you know, it's B class. I don't want to quibble. I'm certainly going to take a second look. It's a great story, very engaging. 7.
I see you.
A nice view of the staircase. I guess it's a staircase. It's, well, it's actually a ceiling, isn't it? Not a staircase. I thought for a minute it was a spiral staircase. It looks, you know, your eye tends to go toward the brightest area, the sharpest area, and the most saturated area. The brightest area, of course, is up on top, and that's probably not what you want the eye going to. The area in the center here, which is really what you want the viewer to look at, is the darkest area. So it's really the reverse, I think, of what it needs to be. I might have worked on the tones a little bit, brightened up the center, toned down the edge, the top edge. But it's a wonderful composition. Technically, it could be improved a little as far as contrast and areas of brightness and darkness. But I'll take a second look. 7.
Tower above Prague.
You know, when I judge images, I look at 3 things: interest or impact, technique, and composition. And when I look at this, it certainly has impact or interest. Sorry, something I can't control. It certainly has impact. It engages my eye. I love the grate in front of the view. I think that the maker gave some thought to this and composed it nicely, was careful about where the top of the image is. It leaves some space above the top of the window opening. The exposure is good. I might have worked on the sky a little bit. You know, if you're familiar with Viveza, if you put a control point in Viveza on the sky and increase the structure, it would give it a little more drama. I might do that to the town as well. But other than that, that's a minor point. Certainly, it's a very engaging image. 7.
Strings.
Another interesting composition. I like the geometry of it. I might have preferred if the maker had moved the camera just a little bit to the right to capture the edge of this curve. I think it would have been more complete with that, and I don't know that you need quite as much on this side. So a movement of the camera in the the right direction, just a couple of inches, I think would have improved it. But those are pretty minor. I think the exposure is good. The composition shows some thought. I'll give it a 7.
I thought I hit it. Hold on a second. Ferns.
Another nice composition. I like that the center of interest is placed below the center of the image. You know, this one might work actually if it were placed right in the middle. Normally you don't, but because of the highly symmetrical nature of the composition itself, of the ferns themselves, it might have worked placed right in the middle. But I think it works nicely this way. There is a however, and I think the contrast could have been increased. It's a little bit flat. If you have the NIC plugins, Color Effects Pro, Dynamic Contrast in the Pro Contrast filter would do very nicely here. If you don't have that, if you just put a levels or curves layer on and increase the mid-range contrast, it would just give it a little more punch. But certainly a very, very nice composition. I like the thought that went into the composition itself. 7.
Okay, we have 9 for the round 2.
Okay, the 7s get no award, the 8s get an honorable mention.
No, only 9s.
Only 9s. So anything I don't give a 9 gets no award, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, open Class B, round 2. Idyllic.
7.
Seeking Freedom.
7.
Rams Day Out.
9.
Camera Shy.
9.
Two Ducks Feeding Tails Up.
7.
I See You.
Not perfect, but for the B class, I'll give it a 9.
Tower Above Prague.
9.
Strings.
8s get no award, correct?
That's correct.
8.
Burns.
9.
Okay, we have 5. Okay, what we're going to do here is I'll flip it into, okay, we're going to have first, second, third, the rest get honorable mention.
Got it. Okay. The shot of Prague through the window gets first.
Okay.
The woman walking into the room gets second.
Okay.
And it's between the ferns and the view up into the roof, the ceiling rather. I See You. I'll give it to I See You, 3rd.
Which one?
This one.
Okay, this one, you got it. Okay, let me assign awards.
Now you're given 2 firsts.
Did I?
Yes.
Hold on.
That gets second.
Which one gets second?
The woman walking into the room.
This one?
Correct.
Let's try this as 7. Give me a second, okay? I may have to. I'm trying to can't. Do you know how to fix this?
I don't.
All right. All right, let's make this a 6. Okay. And if I screw up, I will fix it afterwards, guys.
Hey, everybody, I'm going to jump in here for just a second because I think there might be a little misunderstanding. Phil, 8s can get an award. They can get a 2nd or 3rd place, even a 1st place if it's the best picture.
If there are no 9s.
If
Right.
if there are no nines, correct.
I'll bear that in mind for the next one. In this one, it wasn't a problem, but I'll bear that in mind for the next one.
Okay.
Okay, let me review contest again. If I goofed, I will fix it afterwards. Okay, honorable mention. Camera shy, Walter, congratulations. Burns, Ed, congratulations. Third place, ICU, Michelle, great. And second place, Michelle again, wow. Graham, stay out. And first place, Tower Above Prague. Ed, congratulations.
Very nice images.
Okay, next we're going to do open A. Rafting down the Marta Bray.
Well, it's a good action image. I like the, and not only is it a good action image, but the pose is good. I like the diagonal of the pole. The woman is turned, so at least she's partly facing the camera, which is good. I might have cropped it down just a little bit from the top. I don't know that the sky holds any interest here, so I might have cropped it just a little bit to crop out most of the sky that's visible. And you know, it's not perfect. I mean, the sun was not in your favor. Her face is in shadow, and ideally it should be in sunlight. You might be able to fiddle with that in Photoshop. Again, if you have the Nik plugins in Viveza, put a control point on the woman's face and bring up the brightness. That's very easy to do. That's the only really significant flaw I can see in it, 7.
Arraignment, again, this is the open.
Okay. It's a nice composition, a nice still life of a bouquet. I love the background. The background is black and non-distracting, whether that was done in Photoshop or more likely with a black piece of velvet, something along those lines, but it's nice. I think the photographer really gave some thought to setting it up. My only concern is it just doesn't look sharp. I'm looking at the flowers and they just look a bit soft. Another piece of software you might bear in mind is Topaz Denoise AI, and actually 2 pieces, Topaz Sharpen AI. It's like getting a lens upgrade. If you run this through Topaz Denoise AI and bump up the sharpening aspect of it, it might help a lot. I'll take a second look though. The maker put some thought into it, 7.
Throne room, the Hermitage.
Well, it's nicely composed. You know, technically I can't complain about it. The exposure is good. There is a however here. I just don't know that it's that interesting for a competition. You know, it's if you were giving a slideshow of your trip to the Hermitage, this would be perfect. But as a competition shot, you know, there are compositional flaws in it. I mean, these pillars are halfway in and halfway out, and they're tilted toward the center. You know, I'm trying to think what might improve it. And again, the most interesting part of the picture perhaps is right in the middle, and maybe if you'd focused on that, but even that, it's primarily a record shot. 6.
On the open prairie in New Zealand.
It's a nice landscape, and I would call it a decorated landscape, decorated by the cow. You know, the cow is very small in the landscape, So the cow is certainly not the subject. The subject is the mountain, but it's decorated with a piece of wildlife, a piece of domestic wildlife in this case. Nice sky, it's well exposed. It's not that dramatic an image. And, you know, I know you wanted to put the cow in it, but if it were cropped perhaps right about here, I think it might be more dramatic, a nice pano crop, because the main piece of interest is the mountains, and that's a very horizontal composition. So I think cropping it in to make it more of a horizontal crop might give it a little more drama. As presented, 6.
Hold on a second. Having a little problem here. Give me a second.
Sure.
Okay, flower window.
Well, it's nicely composed. I like the care that the maker took in framing it. Nothing is cut off. The edges of the flowers are in. The bottom of the flower box and of the window opening are in. It's interesting geometrically. It looks just a touch soft when I look at the flowers, but I'll take a second look. 7.
The gardener.
I like the narrative. I like the action that's involved, you know, with the woman, you know, one hand is gloved, the other hand looks like she's about to pour seeds in. I think, however, as in a couple of other pictures, you need to be careful about time of day. You know, if I look at the light is very harsh. It looks like it's close to midday. The sun is high in the sky. The light on the top of her head is very bright. The shadows are very dark. And just as far as composition, you know, her sleeve is right up against the edge of the frame. So 2 things, a little thought to where the angle of the camera is and time of day. If it's your friend or your wife, tell her to go out earlier in the morning and takes a picture then. As presented, those 6.
On fire.
Again, I love the black background. I do think, though, that it's awfully soft. I'm looking for anything that is sharp, and I just don't see anything. And again, a little more room, especially on the left, but really on both sides. Just give it a little more room. Even if you took the picture that way, it's very easy to extend the canvas using the crop tool and clicking the content aware option in Photoshop to just give it a little more room to breathe on both sides. 6.
Church dome, Church of the Spilled Blood, St. Petersburg.
It's an interesting shot. You know, my criticism of this is similar to the other artwork criticisms. I'm going to give this one a 7 to take a second look, though, because I think at least the maker created an interesting composition, shooting up through the arches. Perhaps a little more thought into the composition. You know, if you're going to shoot like this, you really want to make it completely symmetrical, I think. And you have a lot more of the columns coming in from the top than you do on the bottom. So I would have, you know, if you're going to emphasize the arches going up, which I think is the one thing that saves this from just being a record shot of somebody else's piece of art, you should work to really make it as symmetrical as you can. I'll take a second look, though. 7.
The Badlands of New Zealand.
I love the mountains, although you're losing a little bit of exposure on the whites right here. They're a little blown out. I think, you know, the problem with a shot like this is you have such a range of light. You have deep shadows here. You have bright light on snow. This is the kind of image that ideally you want to shoot maybe 2 or 3 exposures and blend them together using luminosity masks or doing HDR. As shot, you know, you're really losing it here. I love the composition. I love this mountain peeking out between the, you know, the cleft of this valley here. But I think the exposure problem is bothering me a little much. And I'm actually just wondering again if cropping it in about here would strengthen it. You have this gravel all the way down at the bottom that I find a little distracting. I think it might have been stronger. You know, your main interest is really in this area. So I would have cropped in more. I'm going to give it a 6 because I think if you take it back into Photoshop and work on it a little bit, it could be strengthened and re-entered and do better.
Anchors away.
Interesting composition. It's an interesting subject and interesting tonality. I think that I'm going to give it a 7 to take a second look, but I can tell you that you have some distractions. You know, one of the things you always want to do, excuse me, in your photographs is what I call border patrol. And as I look around the border, I'm looking for things that shouldn't be there, that might be a little distracting. And I see this tuft of grass down at the bottom. I see this piece up on top. You know, your main interest, of course, is this rusty structure right in the middle. So anything else, you could probably clone these out easily, use content-aware fill. And I also think a little bit of vignetting, because you want to focus the viewer's eye on the most interesting part. Well, the brightest part is up here and down here. And that's not really where you want the viewer to look. You want the viewer to look in the middle. So I think a little tone control with some control points in Viveza, with some levels on another layer that are masked in on just the dark, you know, to tone it down on these brighter areas, or a vignette and whatever your favorite app is would help. 6.
Shoot out at the shore.
I love the story. You know, again, it's shot from the back, and that, you know, that's not ideal, but I think you can see enough of the action that it captures it well. You have some distractions. This fellow over here is a distraction. I also think there's a color cast to the entire image, a kind of yellowish, greenish color cast that could be fixed. So what I'd recommend, I'm going to give it a 6 because I think it can be strengthened and re-entered. And I would do a vignette to tone down some of the areas that are not of that much interest. I mean, your real interest, of course, is here. And I would work on the color cast in whatever way you do that. If I were doing it, I would take it into Nik's Color Effects Pro, and in the Pro Contrast filter, there's a color cast slider that would take it right out. But there are other ways to do it. You can in Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, you can simply work on the color temperature and cool it down a little bit. 6.
Okay, round 2, we have 4 pictures. Rafting down the Martha Bray.
8.
Arraignment.
7,
Flower window.
8,
Church dome, church of, I can't read it because it's blocking.
8,
Okay, so what we do is we have 3/8, and you can, you can give them awards from that. What make it be?
You want me to pick a first, second, third out of the 8?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The flower box gets first.
Okay.
The woman rafting gets second. And that gets third.
Okay, open class A. Third place, Church Dome, Alan Adelson. Congratulations, Alan. Second place, rafting down the Martha Bay. Jack, great shot, Jack. And first place, flower window, Harvey Josephson. Hey, Harvey, great job.
Very nice. As the classes get higher, I have to confess my judging gets a little pickier. So that's a disadvantage of being in a higher class.
Okay, let's score the AA now. Open. Butterfly in black and white.
That's so counterintuitive to do a butterfly in black and white. They lend themselves so much to color. But it's an interesting composition. It's a creative idea. I think, however, that that compositionally it leaves something to be desired. It's very, very tight on the right-hand side. It needs a little more room on the right to give it some room to breathe. And again, the brightest areas are not where the butterfly is. And I might have vignetted it a little bit. And I don't know that this branch at the bottom really contributes to the image at all. 6.
Sweet Thailand Boy Scout.
Great story. I love the expression on the boy's face. I love the thumbs up. I do think that compositionally and technically there are some problems. I really don't see anything in the image that's sharp. And the brightest area, the boy is backlit, and that very bright window or door, whichever it is behind him, really draws my eye away from the boy himself. 6.
Canoe colors.
Nice. I like the contrast between the colorful canoes and the idyllic mountain scene. It looks like someplace up in the Canadian Rockies. It engages my eye. It has some interest, and it's well composed. Sky is nice. Nothing is blown out. 7.
Yellow diamond lily.
An engaging shot. I think it's nicely composed. The structures in the center, I always forget whether they're stamens, pistils, or both, are nice and sharp. The colors are not oversaturated. There's always a temptation with yellows and reds to oversaturate them. Might I have liked to seen the left tip of this petal? Yeah, perhaps, but still, it's in general very nicely done, a non-distracting background. 7.
Yellow lily.
Also nicely done. I might have liked a little more room on the right-hand side, but that's picky. The center structures are nice and sharp. I do think, though, well, I'm trying to decide whether the fact that it's so soft here troubles me. I think focus stacking or F16, F22 might have helped, but I'll take a second look. 7, nicely exposed.
Water lily pad.
It's an unusual composition. Normally in these kind of shots, you want the water as dark as possible to make the lily pad stand out. And the brightest area certainly is not the lily pad itself, but it looks intentional. It looks like it was the photographer composed it that way and it made it very unusual. It's almost like a still life, with the water itself is probably the most interesting part. It's very creative. I'll take a second look. 7. I like the creativity of it.
The lady at lunch.
Looking through a window, it's a very nice story. You know, the window behind her is very bright, and normally I would, as you know, complain about that. But I think the woman herself is so nicely lit that the window behind doesn't bother me particularly. So it's a good story. Parts of it are a little soft. The flowers in the foreground are soft. But, you know, the parts that need to be sharp, I think, are sharp. The only thing I might have done is put a little bit of a vignette on it, a very soft vignette to, again, bring the viewer's eye in. This is probably down here. The flowers are very saturated, probably a little oversaturated. This is bright. This is bright. And I think all of that might have been helped by an oval-shaped vignette to draw the viewer's eye into the middle. But certainly I'll take a second look. 7.
Keeping an eye on UT. U2, I guess.
I like the thought behind it, you know, peeking out behind the greenery. There's a big however. The statue itself is not sharp, and it looks like this might have been a handheld shot at a relatively slow shutter speed. Time of day is not good. The shadows are very harsh. The light is coming from straight above. And this out of focus greenery in the foreground just does not add to the image at all. 6.
Taipei Temple.
I like the geometry. It's an interesting geometry. I think, however, that you know, the exposure, the range of light in the structure itself it looks flat. In addition to which, the brightest area is this white sky up here. For me, it just doesn't work. I find myself looking at the sky and not at the structure itself. 6.
Bridge to nowhere.
It's an engaging image. You know, it's very much off center, the leading lines of the bridge. It's going right over to the corner of the picture, which is unusual, but it's also clearly intentional. And I love the view of the marsh that's visible through the openings in the railing. Is it a little soft here? Yeah, a little bit, but my eye really follows the lines of the walkway. The grain in the wood is terrific. 7.
Wetlands at dawn.
Nice, nice reflection of the snowy egret. You know, this is a bird in its environment shot, and normally you'd want the bird to be bigger. However, in this case, the environment itself is so interesting. It's sunrise or sunset, I don't know which, but it's a little before sunset or a little after sunrise. The sun is nicely hidden by this interesting bank of clouds, well exposed. Yeah, maybe you lost just a little bit of whites on the top of the snowy egret, but it's pretty well exposed, and it's just such an interesting environment. The water is calm, the reflection is good. 7.
Mark,
Yeah, I just put you back on that. I was sending you a message. Okay.
did you get Harvey's or my message about Harvey?
No, I didn't get Harvey's message.
Harvey cannot see the pictures. Harvey Birnbaum.
I honestly don't know what, it's his setup somehow because everybody else can. Can you, Rich?
Yes, I can.
It's his setup, and I really can't, do anything right now in the middle of competition because everything here is working. You've got it.
He can try signing off and signing back on. Sometimes that works.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, let me judge this one. I love the reflection. The trees themselves, well, I'm looking at it and it's just a little busy with dead branches. You know, I think these reflection shots, a little bit of work in Photoshop to clean up some of these dead branches that I find distracting, and this trunk over here, I think would improve this dramatically. I'm going to give it a 6. So the maker can take it back into Photoshop and clean it up a little bit.
Okay. Capone's quarters.
Somebody's been visiting Eastern State Penitentiary. I must have 20 shots of that cell. It's an interesting cell, and you can't but help be engaged by the shot. I think, however, that there are some exposure problems, especially in the advanced class. You know, you really have lost some whites here, and not that that's always a problem, but I think you didn't need to lose these whites to burn it out. You know, you almost always shoot this as a multiple exposure HDR or blending the exposures with luminosity masks. So there's no reason to lose those whites and to make those the brightest area of the image. My eye is so easily drawn to them when that's clearly not what you want. So I'm going to suggest re-editing it and trying to re-enter at 6.
Bathing beauties.
It's an interesting composition. Shot from the back, mostly in this case. Of course, no matter what angle you shot it from, 2 of them would have been from the back. I just don't know that it's a composition shot. Now, unless I'm missing something, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I have a border at the bottom that says participants chat, share screen, but on my screen, the bottoms of the feet are cut off right about here.
No, they're there. I see it.
Okay, well then I'll have to bear that in mind for future shots. But still, I just don't see it as a compelling image that for a competition. It's interesting. I think perhaps if you were giving a slideshow on your trip to the Jersey Shore or wherever that was shot, it would be interesting, but not for a competition. 6.
Girls dress for fun.
It's an interesting it's an interesting photograph. I'm looking at them and trying to figure out how they got there. So it engages my eye, engages my mind. I think it could have been composed a little more carefully. Number one, you have a time of day problem. I repeat that, but look at the shadows. The sun is coming right down onto the tops of the dolls' heads. So it was shot close to midday, when the sun is high in the sky, the faces are in shadow. It's really not what you want, especially in the AA class. And I might have given a little more thought to where the edges of the frame are, cutting off the edges of these two dolls, I think just doesn't work. As presented, 6.
Sunrise at the beach.
It's well exposed, but I think that for the AA class, I would just want a little more for a competition shot. The exposure is nice. The clouds are pleasant, but there's nothing dramatic about them. The foreground itself, true, you have the sun reflecting in the water, but there's nothing that really grabs my eye to anchor the foreground. I think for sunrise or sunset shots, you really need something of interest in the foreground, and this lacks it. 6.
Getting some sun.
Getting a little vitamin D, very nice. I like the placement of the turtle in the frame. I love the patterns in the water. I don't like two things. Two things cause me trouble. One, you know what I'm going to say about time of day, so I won't repeat it. And the second is this piece over here on the right. Remember that the eye is going to the brightest spot, and to me that piece is distracting, especially in the AA class. You could easily get rid of that. And the third thing is sharpness. I'm looking at the turtle. It's soft here. It's a little bit soft on the face, soft on the leg. I don't know whether it was a handheld shot and at a slow shutter speed, or whether the focus point was someplace other than the turtle itself. 6.
Deserted boardwalk.
I like this image. It's a nice black and white conversion. The sky itself is not that interesting, and if it were in color, I think the sky would be dull. But as a black and white image, you get some subtle tones, some subtle gradations of grays, so I think that helps it. This is the perfect kind of image for a black and white conversion. And the geometry is interesting. The line leading in here to the building, the light poles are nicely placed. Diagonals here, diagonals there, diagonals of the wood, just very nicely done. I might have liked a little more contrast in it, but other than that, very nicely done. 7.
Together forever.
Another rule broken, shot from the back, but I think it works here. I think as a composition, having the couple walking together into the distance, the leading lines, drawing your eye to them. Is the sky a little bright? Yeah, it is. I'm wondering if this might not have been an image that would have been perfect for a sky replacement. But, other than that, and I'm thinking, would it have been better cropped? But then you lose the top of the palm trees, and I think they give it a nice sense of place. It makes it tropical. I'll take a second look. 7.
Cowboy in black and white.
Wonderful expression. Very serious. This is a man who's seen a lot of life. He's a little soft. I'm trying to see if there's anything sharp. Technically, it's a little weak based on the softness, and it might have been a handheld shot. It's hard to tell whether it's that or whether it's a focus problem. The front of the brim is soft. Glasses might be sharp, but the face is generally soft. Technically, it's a little weak. Compositionally, it's good. And as far as interest, it's good. I'll take a second look, 7.
Art.
This is art on art. It's engaging. You know, it has a very interesting narrative, very interesting story, a heavily tattooed woman creating art on the sidewalk. The exposure is good. There's nothing burnt out. You have a nice range of tones. The only thing I might have done is darken these areas. I think this piece is a little distracting. That's not really the subject. And this area is a little bright. And I might have taken that into Photoshop. I would be using Viveza to just put control points on them and tone them down a little bit to focus the eye more in this area where is really where you want the viewer looking. But I'll take a second look, 7.
Okay, round 2, 11 shots. Open class AA. Canoe colors.
9,
Yellow diamond lily.
9,
Yellow lily.
8,
Water lily pad.
8,
The lady at lunch.
8,
Bridge to nowhere.
9,
Wetlands at dawn.
9,
Deserted boardwalk.
9,
Together forever.
8,
Cowboy in black and white.
8,
Art.
9.
Okay.
Okay, why don't you show them all to me at the bottom and I'll pick my first, second, and third.
Okay.
That's, go back one. That's first.
Okay.
The very first one, the canoes with the mountains. Second.
Okay.
Third is tough. The other 3 are all very good. I'm going to give it to this one, the black and white.
This one?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Open class AA. Honorable mention. Yellow diamond lily, Mario. Congratulations. Bridge to nowhere, Harvey Birnbaum. Art, Bobby Greenfield. Third place. Deserted boardwalk, Dan. Congratulations. Second place. Canoe colors, Harvey Birnbaum. Way to go. And first place, Wetlands at Dawn, Mario. Great job.
Very nice images.
Okay, and at this point, we're going to go to theme B.
Okay.
And again, the theme is motion. Bun G.
That's a very engaging shot. I think the maker used a fast shutter speed to stop the motion in this case. I love the diagonal line of the bungee curving right across the image, nicely composed. The only thing that might have helped, and again, you're probably seeing some consistency to my critique, you want to focus the viewer's eye on this figure. The brightest area is over here. So I would have toned that down in Photoshop. I think a vignette with the center of the vignette right here. So that's the brightest area, would have helped. But for the B class, I'll take a second look, 7.
Taking the lead.
Very dramatic sense of motion. I love the dirt being kicked up. You know, it's a wonderful action shot. I think that the maker has good sharpness in the horse's face, and yet a nice sense of motion in the hoofs and the legs. Well exposed, 7.
Boy in motion.
I'm not sure if he's actually in motion or if he's about to go in motion. It looks like one foot might be on the ground, but in any event, I won't quibble with that. It's a nice narrative, a good action shot, a couple of suggestions that I think would improve it. And by now, you know, I think the crop tool is your friend. You want to eliminate anything that doesn't add to the image. And I don't know that the sky above here holds much interest, or the ground below here holds much interest. It's really a horizontal composition. If you could, I might have added a little more room in front of him and cropped out the top and the bottom. As presented, 6.
Dancing.
Very nice narrative. I like the horizontal composition with the horizontal crop. You know, a very small point. You know, you're awfully close to the bottom here. You want a little more room. You might have clipped that shoe a little bit. And those are the kind of things that'll take you up from the B class to the A class, giving that a little more thought. But it's very small. I think you get a nice sense of narrative emotion here. 7.
Scramble.
I think a foul is probably going to be called here. That's a really good story. I think that technically it lacks something though. You clipped the bottom of both of their feet. And,
I can see the feet.
oh, sorry, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. I have to remind myself that, I have to keep reminding myself that I have a bar at the bottom of my screen. However, they're very soft, and I think that they just need to be sharper in an image where the most important part, you know, are these two figures, and to have them out of focus just doesn't work. 6.
I got it.
Oh, I see. I assume that these were intentionally masked. I would guess that's the case for privacy reasons. My critique of this one is similar to the last one, although on this one, the feet are all in. I love the action, but the shot just needs to be sharp, and it's not. They're all soft. I just don't see anything that is sharp here, so I'm going to have to give it a 6 again.
Wind-blown pond.
Well, this really is kind of a pattern shot. It's interesting geometry. It's a little bit underexposed. It looks a little underexposed to me. I think it could be brightened a bit. But the brightest area is in the center, which is what you want. I'll take a second look, 7.
Rainy day.
It's creative. You know, it's not something that most people would think of shooting. However, it is all out of focus. I don't see anything in the image that's sharp. And I think that probably this area is where your picture is, and yet the brightest area is up on top. I would have tried to tone this down up on top in Photoshop or whatever editing program you use. I automatically think of Photoshop. As presented, those 6.
Up in the air.
Well, it's an interesting story. It looks like they're about to be dropped. Something I would have loved as a kid, and now my stomach turns over as a 71-year-old. I think that you have a time of day problem. Again, light is coming from above. The sky really does not hold that much interest. It's just solid blue. And you really can't see the people that well. Now, of course, unless you were in a helicopter, you couldn't shoot down at them. But maybe if they were a little bit lower, you get a better angle on them. And if you shot either earlier or later in the day so that you had nicer light. 6.
Nothing but net.
Okay, I'll assume that the bottom of the feet are there.
No.
They're not in this case.
No.
Okay, then my criticism holds. And again, they're just not sharp. So whoever is doing these photographs, work on sharpness. You may need a faster shutter speed. If you're shooting handheld at a 60th of a second, it just won't work. Put your ISO up higher, maybe 800, shoot at 500th, or if you can, 1,000th of a second, and you're much more likely to get a sharp shot. 6.
The pass.
Again, a nice story, but I'm just going to have to say the same thing here. I don't see anything in the image that's sharp, which makes me think that it's a stabilization problem, a handheld image at just too slow a shutter speed. 6.
Bear play.
A great story. It's a wonderful narrative, and 2 things would improve it. 1, I know you have a little bit of reflection here, but I just don't think it's that strong. I think it would be stronger cropped in about here. Your composition is very horizontal with the 2 bears, so I think the crop should probably be horizontal. And the second, again, is a time of day problem. The sun is just coming almost straight down on the top of this bear's head. But I'm going to give it a second to take a second look for the B class. It's a wonderful, engaging story.
We.
Well, I think that my critique of this is similar to my critique of the last similar shot. And that is, your time of day is wrong. All of the people, for the most part, are in shadow. If you shot it either early in the day or late in the day, you get much more interesting light on them. And your light right here is very bright, and that area is very burnt out. So the brightest area of your image, which is right here, is probably not the part that you'd like people to look at the most, which is the people who are swinging around. So I'm going to give this one a 6.
The rebound.
Yeah, I believe my critique will be the same on this one. In addition to which, let me point out one other thing about the exposure. Even if it were sharp, it's just a little flat. It looks a little underexposed to me, and also maybe a little bit of a yellowish color cast. If it were sharp, which it's not, you can improve it by brightening it up a little bit, and especially, again, putting a little bit of a subtle vignette on to have these two figures be the brightest area, and all the area around be just a little bit darker. 6.
Okay, round 2, we've got 5. Motion, Class B. Bungee,
9.
taking the lead.
9.
Dancing,
8.
windblown pond.
8.
Bear play,
8.
okay.
Okay, in this one, the horse is first and the bungee jumper is second. And then I'll pick
Okay, give me a second, let me just assign awards, okay?
Sure. And I'll pick a third out of the 8.
Good.
Well, let me look at the bear for a minute. You know, the bear isn't perfect. It could be cropped a little better, and the area on the top of the head bothers me, but it's such a strong story that fits the theme well that I'll give this one 3rd place.
Okay. Stonebridge Photography Club Theme Motion Class B, 3rd place. Bear play, Walter, congratulations. 2nd place, Bungee, Ed Adelson, really nice. And 1st place, taking the lead, Walter again. Great job, Walter. Okay, now we're going to move into motion A, and we have 20 in motion A.
Okay.
Safe.
Great action, certainly fits the theme. You know, they are backlit, actually mostly side lit. And I might have, you can't control the light, but you can at least work in Photoshop a little bit. You really want to brighten his face. The face is so important. I would brighten that up and darken this guy behind him, which is really a distraction. And of course, this glove, I mean, you needed to be standing back just another couple of feet, or if you had a zoom lens to zoom out a little bit. 6.
Time flies.
I guess this is a composite, and it's certainly a creative composite. I'm trying to get a sense of what exactly happened here. It looks like, I'm not sure. It looks like some things were downloaded, you know, maybe this lightning. I don't imagine the person actually shot that. If they did, my congratulations. It's a wonderful lightning shot. But it looks to me like it was probably downloaded. I'm not sure about the watches. They may have been downloaded as well. It's a very creative idea, and somebody who was certainly practicing their compositing skills. It just looks a little bit artificial to, not a little bit, it looks very artificial to me, but also very creative. And I have to give the maker credit for that. I'll take a second look, 7.
Soccer Time 2020.
Good story. It fits the theme well. You know, the motion is certainly stopped here. Everybody is sharp, which I like, as you can gather by now. The light, it's a little bit harsh, but well, it seems to be coming about on this angle, judging by the shadow. That's pretty good. I think that this shirt could have been toned down a little bit. I think you're losing a little bit in the whites in that shirt. But a nice story, 7.
Whirling.
That's very creative. You know, the photographer here was clearly on a tripod because the fence is nice and sharp, but this is moving. So I would guess that's probably not a handheld shot, although I suppose it's possible with image stabilization, but most likely on a tripod. You really get a nice sense of motion. The brightest area is the most interesting area where you want the eye to go. I'm just trying to see whether it would have been stronger cropped about here. I don't know that this umbrella adds much. To me, the most interesting part, and in fact cropped about here, because this area on the right is very bright and is not, Siri thinks I'm talking to it. I'll take a second look though, 7.
Horse Jumper, Wellington, Florida.
Great story, not great light. I might have, nothing you can do about the light, you know, that's when you shot it. It's coming from a little too high, although mostly side light, I guess. The problem though is that the main part of interest is really in shadow. Nothing you can do about that, but again, I think at least in Photoshop, if I were doing it, I'd take it into Viveza and just brighten that up a little bit, especially the rider's face. And I might have cropped it about here to get rid of this bright sky. But I'll take a second look, 7. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. It's sharp.
Ocean Motion.
Very dramatic. It certainly engages my eye. And I think the maker here did give a little care to exposure. This area is nice and dark. The brightest area is certainly in here. I might have toned this down just a little bit, not as dark as this rock because the tonality is much lighter in real life, but I might have toned it down a little bit just to make sure that the maker is really looking where you want, which is right in here. But in general, very nicely done, 7.
Babbling Brook.
Well, I mean, I guess this part does give it a sense of motion, but the motion part of the picture is just a relatively small fraction of the image. Most of the image is fairly still, not fairly, it is still, and not particularly engaging or dramatic. And parts of the image that I think or central focus are in deep shadow. 6.
Dancers.
You know, they say you're not supposed to shoot down at your subject, but here I think it works pretty well. I think you get a really nice sense of motion in the female dancer's hair and in her swirling skirt. I would like to have seen the top of his head. And I might have brightened him up a touch and darkened some of these figures around the background. Again, your story is here. So you want that to be the sharpest, the brightest, most engaging area. And, you know, just a little bit of control of tonality would really help this. But it certainly fits the theme. I'll take a second look. 7.
A good day to jump off a building.
I'm not sure that for me, any day would be a good day to jump off a building. But I guess for her it was. You certainly capture the drama of the jump. I would like to see her face a little brighter because the expression on her face, I think, is really critical. And I would like to see, in fact, now that I think about it, her whole body a bit brighter. You know, she's in shadow and she really is the subject. So she should be the brightest area when in this case, the building and especially these areas are the brightest. So I'll take a second look because I think it fits the theme well, but there are some problems with it that will probably keep it at a 7 for me. But for now, 7. I'll take a second look.
The falls.
Very dramatic. Certainly you get a sense of motion in the water. I'm troubled though by what seems to me a general lack of sharpness. I'm trying to look now. I guess this part of the water is sharp because it looks like this area in close is sharp as well. But as soon as you get past that, it all looks soft to me. And I really think for an image like this, you know, it should be sharp, certainly from the front up to the back falls. 6.
Flapping in the breeze.
Well, you get a sense of motion in the flag. I think, though, that the brightest part clearly is the sky. I like the light coming through the flag, the translucence of it, and even this shadow here. But the sky is just too much for me. I think clearly, at the very least, it should have been cropped here. That might have helped. I just don't know. I just don't know that this was the right day to shoot it with a bright gray overcast sky like that. 6.
Gaucho dances Argentina.
You know, it's a little busy, and I think a vignette would have helped it very much. But other than that, I think it works pretty well. You captured the bottom of the feet, and as you know by now, I like that. It shows that you gave some thought to your framing. The main story is here in the dancers, which are nicely lit in this case, but you have a secondary story here, and you captured just enough to make it work. Other than a vignette, which would have toned down some of this up here and this here, I think it works very well. 7.
New York water taxi.
it fits the theme. It's well exposed, but I just don't know that it's a competition shot. It's mostly a record shot. I think if you wanted to emphasize, you have all this empty water up here, which does nothing. It doesn't contribute to the image. Your story is very much a horizontal story, with the motion going in that direction. So, the crop tool is your friend. Well, maybe a little higher than that, not quite that close. And, make it like this, a little bit of room behind and more room in front, and a nice pano crop, I think would strengthen the image dramatically. So 6, give that some thought and resubmit it in another contest.
The Windsurfer.
Great story, nicely placed in the frame, but almost completely soft. Everything is soft. I just don't see anything in the windsurfer or the board or the sail that is sharp. Again, if that's a handheld shot, raise your ISO to 800, get a much faster shutter speed. The sun, it's in high sun, you could probably easily get 1,000th of a second and you'll get your sharp shot. 6.
Camera motion.
Well, that's an interesting interpretation. I think the composition for me could be strengthened a little bit by cropping in at the bottom and just a little bit at the top. I mean, as you can see by now, I think if if part of an image doesn't contribute to the image, get rid of it. And, that's, every judge is different. That's my taste. And I also would like to see the back, the buttocks of this person. But other than that, I think it's very creative. And it's an unusual interpretation of motion. 7.
Falling out.
A great narrative. I think that a couple things could be improved. I think it lacks a little bit in dynamic range. The image is flat. And again, I think you need to shoot a little wider. Give yourself a little room to work with. Even if you want to crop in, you don't want to lose the tip of the foot, which is important. 6.
Street dances, Barcelona, Spain.
Nicely composed. It's a little busy. When you have these images where you have something happening here that really is not important to the story, I think at the very least, use a little tone control. Ansel Adams would spend hours in the dark room dodging and burning. So what you want to do is you want to be burning in this area. However you would do that, using the burn tool in Photoshop or Photoshop Elements, or if I were doing it using Viveza to darken it, putting a little bit of a vignette on it perhaps, but something so that the viewer's eye is not drawn so much to that area. Other than that, I like it very much. The dancers are sharp. Yeah, you have a little bit of a time of day problem. The sun is fairly high, although at least not straight up, because it looks like it's coming from about here, since the shadow of his face appears to be falling on her head. I'll take a second look. 7.
Shaky hands.
I think it works here. Another nice, some thought went into this. The motion kind of adds interest to the composition. I might like to see a little more sharpness in the Statue of Liberty. But I think that it works pretty well. And I like the creativity involved, a different approach to motion. 7.
42nd Street.
I'm trying to figure out what's happening here. Is this person riding up a wall? I mean, I can't quite, right here, I can't quite figure that out. It's certainly engaging my eye, and for that reason itself, I'm going to take a second look. But it's awfully busy, and I'm not sure what to focus on. So I know 42nd Street can be like that, but part of the photographer's job is to make order out of chaos, and I'm just not sure that this one completely succeeds, but I'll take a second look. 7.
Jogging on the beach.
Nicely placed in the frame. I like the diagonal of the shoreline. I don't think the light helps you here, though. The front of the figure, which is mostly what you're interested in, is in shadow. What you need to do is have him run 20 yards further and say, hey, turn around, run the other way. And maybe you can get the light falling on him to light him a little bit better. But as presented, 6.
Okay, round 2. Motion A, time flies.
8.
Soccer time, 2020.
9.
Whirling.
9.
Horse jump off, Wellington, Florida.
9.
Ocean motion.
9.
Dancers.
8.
A good day to jump off a building.
7.
Gaucho dances, Argentina.
9.
Camera motion.
9.
Street dances, Barcelona, Spain.
8.
Shaky hands.
8.
42nd Street.
7.
Okay,
So I'll pick first, second, and third out of that.
right. And the rest get honorable mention.
Got it. Okay. The Barcelona dancers get 1 first.
Hold on. Make sure I got the right one. This it?
That's correct. Argentina. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Argentina. That's why yeah. Okay.
This one, no, go back. This will get second. Okay, the black and white that's all the way to the right.
I'm sorry. Let me get back into it.
That was, yeah, that gets third. Very creative.
Okay. Theme motion class A, honorable mention. Soccer time, Mark. Whirling, Claude. Very nice. Horse jump, Wellington, Florida, Alan. Theme, third place. Camera motion, Flo. Very nice. Second place, Ocean Motion, Harvey Josephine. First place, Gaucho Dances, Alan Adelson. Okay, now
Very nice.
to wrap it up, Theme Motion A. You have 21.
Okay.
AA, theme, Three Ducks A Going.
Well, let's ignore the fact that they're Canada geese, not ducks. But aside from that, they're just not sharp, and especially in the AA class, they're soft. You have this very distracting stuff. 6.
Out for a Stroll.
Okay, that happens in Yellowstone, the traffic jam of both bison and cars. It's an interesting composition. I like the fact that they're coming right toward the photographer, who presumably is in a car, not standing out in the middle of the road in front of the bison. They are a bit underexposed though. They're awfully dark, and I know bison are dark, but it's just a little too dark for me. This whole foreground area is just underexposed. 6.
Joy to the Tilt-A-Whirl. Joy on the Tilt-A-Whirl.
I think I need some Dramamine just to look at the shot. Wonderful capture of motion. I absolutely love that you can just about see the expressions on their faces, you know, the excitement or the terror, one of the two. It's a really nice composition. 7.
Fire in the Hole.
Interesting black and white conversion. I might have liked to have seen the edge of this person, but other than that, I think it's nicely done. The sky is interesting. The composition is interesting. You know, they're shot from the back, but I think it works here. The way they have their hands over their ears. 7.
Fifth, Polar Bear Plunge.
Why does it not look like these two young women are having fun? It doesn't look like they're having fun to me. I'm not so sure about the crop. I definitely would have liked to have seen a little more here. And on this woman, the young woman, I think 2 possibilities: either more room down here or less room. Maybe if you had cropped it about here so that it looks like it would be intentional. Now it just looks like it was a mistake, that you just didn't shoot quite wide enough. But the story is great. It certainly fits the theme. The exposure is good. I'll take a second look.
Airborne.
Going off a ramp, a little jump. Certainly fits the theme. The only thing I might consider, and this is a AA class, and you know, it's the kind of thing where I might have considered replacing the sky, if that's the kind of thing you're comfortable with and know how to do, because it's so bright compared to the subject, which is here, that it really draws my eye away. Other than that, it's a terrific photo. It has a great story, and I like the standing figure here watching the other person go off the jump. So other than the sky, it's terrific. 7.
Splash.
Very creative. I like the black and white conversion. I like the abstract pattern. I think the diagonal lines work in this case. 7.
The Wally Solo Dancer.
It fits the theme well. You know, I really get a sense of motion, but it's just too soft. And again, I think a faster shutter speed would have worked much better here. Either that or shoot it from a I mean, in fact, nothing in it is soft. I'm sorry, nothing in it is sharp. And I just can't tell whether it's a focus problem, a stabilization problem, or a shutter speed problem, or a combination of those. 6.
Dancing Waters.
We saw this one, didn't we?
Well, this is, you're probably going to see a lot. You may see more. This is a local, it's local to us.
Okay, I got it. So, well, it certainly fits the theme well. I have to say, though, and I felt this about the last time I saw this subject, it's just not that interesting a subject. You know, I mean, it's you know, there are 3 levels of shots. There are shots that should be deleted because they're softer. You know, they're terrible shots. The next level up is a record shot that, you know, perhaps if you were doing a photo tour of your community, and presumably this is in Stonebridge, you might include this. And the next level up is a frame it, put it on your wall shot, or enter it in a competition shot. And I just don't think this subject is compelling enough. 6.
Table for One.
That's good. I like that. I think that it's very creative. I like the motion in the butterfly's wings, but, and there's a but here, I just think it would be stronger. I think some part of the butterfly has to be sharp. And so, you know, whether you were doing this handheld, because I'm not sure anything is sharp, even things that are stationary, or in fact, that's what it looks like the problem was. I need something sharp in the image. 6.
On the Move.
I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at. Is this somebody's arm and that's their hand that's in a blur? It certainly fits the theme well. And I'm just not sure whether that's motion of the person or camera motion. It's unusual, it's engaging. I'll take a second look. 7.
Shinnecock Powwow Dancer.
It's a nice composition. You've heard my critique in the past about these moving figures. Here, at least, the woman's face and her head are sharp. Everything else can be in motion, but at least something on her is sharp, and that's how it needs to be. I do think that certain things could have been toned down. The grass looks a little oversaturated. In fact, the entire image looks a little bit oversaturated. So I can tell you right now, for that reason, it won't get the top award, but it may get some award. I'm going to take a second look and give it a 7 because I love the fact that you got the motion with the sharp face, sharp head.
Turkey Vulture in Flight.
Nice and crisp. Every part of the turkey vulture is sharp. The sky, yeah, you know, it doesn't really add much, but you really couldn't eliminate anything because the turkey vulture itself, you know, is on a nice diagonal. The composition is excellent. The exposure is excellent. Everything is sharp. You can see detail in the white underwing. 7.
Waterfall.
Well, this works. You know, it's selective color, which usually I don't like because I think it looks gimmicky, but I think here it works. You have this small figure dwarfed by this enormous waterfall. It looks like it's probably in Iceland. And Just saved a little bit of color. Actually, maybe it's not selective color because the foliage over here is green as well. So this, if that's the case, this is certainly in Iceland, the volcanic black sand. You know, it's shot from the back, but I think it works here again because, you know, the story is looking at the moving water, looking at this falling water. And it works very nicely. 7.
And around we go again.
Composition, I think, is excellent. It fits the theme very well, the sense of motion in some of those moving, whatever they are. I guess those are, you know, the containers that people sit in. Oh, and this is a Ferris wheel that's crossing it. I see. There are two rides going at once here. I might have brightened this up, and I might have tried to get a little more of this in. It's kind of half in, half out. But those are small points. I think in general it works pretty well. 7.
Spinning ride.
Nicely composed. You know, I'm very partial to night photography. I think it has a nice sense of drama. You can see a little bit of the motion. The center where there's the least motion in here is fairly sharp. 7.
Slow motion.
I love it. I think it's very creative. I think that it's a wonderful story. The black and white conversion works well. Even the negative space of all the sand works well. A little bit of a vignette works well. In my eye, everything works well. 7.
High sticks.
I always wonder how more of these people don't get injured swinging those mallets around. Really captures the sense of motion very well. You know, perhaps it might have worked better if you waited half a second so that this person wasn't covered up by the individual's arm. You know, that aspect of it doesn't work very well. But other than that, and other than the merger, I mean, really, I would have liked a little more separation. It might be okay if the head of the second horse is covered, but I really think it would work better if this face were not covered by the arm. But a wonderful capture of motion. The horses are sharp. I'll take a second look. 7.
Power surfing.
Captures the theme well. I would have cropped it about here. I think this is distracting, this splash over here. And I think the tonality is flat. I think it could very easily be, I mean, first of all, it's a very flat sky that holds little interest. Nothing you can do about that. That's the day you shot it on. But I think the overall tone is very flat. I'm looking, I don't really see a white point. I suspect if you looked at your histogram, you could really, you know, take this into curves, put an S curve on it, make a better white point, and it would strengthen the image. 6.
The Wali dancers.
It fits the theme very nicely. You capture the motion nicely. However, I just don't see anything sharp. I think that at least one of the women's faces needs to be sharp. And in this case, neither is sharp. I need to see something in the image that's sharp. 6.
Amped.
Wonderful sense of motion. You know, I think here it lacks a little sharpness in the face. The board itself is pretty sharp. So I'm wondering if your focus point was just a little bit off. But on the other hand, it's so clearly stylized that it's not supposed to be realistic. And based on that, I'll give it a pass on the lack of sharpness in the face. Because it's so dramatic, this incredible splash radiating off. 7.
Okay. Round 2, we have 14.
Okay.
Joy on the tilt-a-whirl.
9.
Fire in the hole.
A little bit flat. 8.
Fifth, polar bear plunge.
8.
Airborne.
8.
Splash.
9.
On the move.
8.
Shinnecock powwow dancer.
Just a little too oversaturated. 8.
Turkey vulture in flight.
9.
Waterfall.
9.
And around we go again.
8.
Spinning ride.
9.
Slow motion.
9.
High sticks.
8.
Amped.
9.
Okay.
Tough, tough, tough. These are terrific. Okay. The very first one, the merry-go-round in red, that gets first. Tilt-a-whirl, that's what it is.
Right.
This is really tough. They're all really good. Okay. Second and third, I'm going to choose between the, show me the person in front of the waterfall. That one, yeah, that one. And show me the person in black and white with the fishing rods. Okay, this will get second, and the person in front of the waterfall will get third. These are really strong images.
Okay. Theme motion class AA. Honorable mention. Splash. Sandy. Great job. Turkey vulture in flight. Mario Adini. Beautiful. Spinning ride. Rich. Honorable mention. Great. Amped. Harvey Birnbaum. Third place. Waterfall. Sandy. Beautiful. Second place. Slow motion. Big Dan. And first place. Joy on the Tilt-a-whirl. Bobby. Beautiful job, guys.
Yeah, those are really strong images. Very nice.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share now. Who do we have? Alan. Alan is, he should be, stop the video on Alan. And let's see, here's Phil.
You want to
Phil.
turn on my video?
Yeah, turn on your video.
It says I can't start it because the host has stopped it.
Now you can.
Okay. Any questions? Anybody want to come let the air out of my tires?
I don't see in the chat here anything. Rich?
Everybody else is still muted.
I know, but they could chat. You want to unmute? I'll unmute all if you want.
Sure, why not?
Okay.
But while we're waiting, I'll tell you, Phil, you were very, very tough, but you were very, very fair, and your comments were terrific.
Well, thank you.
And for one, I'll say I appreciate you giving me a 6 to allow me to make some minor changes and make it a much better shot.
Thank you. You know, we all like to get good scores, but the important part, of course, is learning to. I remember the very first contest I entered back in 2003. It was in Cam Nats, and I was sitting behind the judge, and my image came up, the very first image I had ever entered in a competition. And the judge said, 3 things about this image I don't like. He was a tough judge. I had to double my Prozac after that, but you know, I learned from that, and my image has improved.
I have no real question, Phil. Just wanted to tell you that I thought your comments and critiques were really very good. They just gave a lot of information, and I think you were pretty consistent throughout.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm a little confused because it was supposed to be motion, yet you gave, I mean, the photos were great, but a lot of the photos you gave good marks to were stop motion. They were frozen, not moving.
Well, you know,
How do you account for that?
I account for it by my interpretation. The motion is implied, and you know, if the object itself, if the person itself was in motion, even if the motion was frozen, I thought it fit the theme. If another judge were judging, perhaps another judge would have disqualified those or given them 6s. But I tend to be fairly lenient as to what I allow in, at least as far as what fits the theme.
Let me just, I'd like to add to that. I think throughout all the motion techniques we've looked at, freeze motion is one of the categories.
Yes, it is.
If you look at anything that we have, even on our website, Claude went over it years ago. We put out a paper on it. The very first category is freeze. And as Phil said, motion is implied within the context of the image.
You know, another judge might have felt differently, but I agree. The motion is implied, so I thought it was fine. Any other questions, comments? Well, I thank all of you for having me. I was actually looking forward to coming down to Stonebridge. You know, I live in Canal Walk, another 55 and over community, so I always like to see what the other communities look like.
Well, maybe next time.
Next time.
Maybe next time. But it did save me a long drive late at night coming back.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark, for putting this together. You did a great job.
You did a good job.
Very nice.
Thanks,
Very
Ken.
fair.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
me.
Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.